We're going to mute Richard.
Need to mute the preacher's mic. He's headed for the restroom. Celebrating Travis's journey through our church history, Lord, we pray that you'll bless us and protect us. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Tim and Marilyn and Sue. Good evening, church.
Good evening.
Everybody doing all right? Did you have a good afternoon?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, well, I'm glad. What we're going to do, we're going to have a little time of Bible study or something here for a few minutes, and then we're going to come to the Lord's table and observe the Lord's Supper together, and then we'll move down the hallway, and I believe they're preparing some ice cream and desserts for us in Fellowship Hall. Everybody is welcome to come and stay and be a part of that. I'm glad that you're here tonight. It looks like, just kind of glancing at the crowd, it looks like we may have some friends here tonight, sort of a Friends of Travis club, maybe. So it might be apropos before we open our Bibles, to just take a moment and see if anybody has a testimony that you might like to share about Travis and what he's meant to you over the last 17 and a half years. Who would, anybody here would like to do, I see people laughing, Travis, so I don't know how this could go sideways on me. Anybody, any takers? Anybody like to stand up and give a testimony?
Can I just tell a funny story?
A funny story will work.
Well, when we went to Greece, they split us up, and there was half of the group was in the country with a great cook who had made wonderful meals for y'all, and the other portion of us depended on each other, and it was scary, like watching David Burns cook rice. That was an interesting concept. But we stayed in this little tiny, it was a church, but it was a floor on a building, in a building. And they had this real little kitchenette kind of thing, and tiny little refrigerator, and a tiny little stove that had, it was like an older stove that used to have the lid that went down over the burners. So one morning, Travis is going to cook some sausage. I don't think it was really sausage though.
No.
Some kind of meat.
Window sausage.
But anyway, so Travis has got the pan and he complains that it's taking so long to cook. He said, I just don't understand. He turns the fire up, he turns the fire up, and he's like, it's just not cooking right, it's just not cooking right. And I don't know who it was that noticed it, but somebody went there and said, Travis, you've got the lid down. So he has the lid down over the burner. Picks up moves the skillet, lifts it up. There's the hole underneath of that was burnt. Big old red. So yeah, Travis almost burnt the church.
I noticed it when the paint was melting, okay?
Would you like to say anything in your defense?
Yeah, I'm an idiot. It was early. It was another country.
Yeah, another
Still
jet lag.
Look, I just wanted the meat in me. That's all.
There were a lot of good stories that came from that. That's the trip where he was teaching me to call hogs. Just a little confused about the gospel, but everything was okay. All right, somebody else. Ashton? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Hey, Travis. I'm Ashley.
Yes.
Or hey, Travis. See, I always say hey, Ashley. Anywho, so I guess I started Cooking Grace, 2013, I think, my senior year, and I had a little bit of help from Jennifer Waters. She kind of pushed me to start coming here and visiting, and then so with Travis, I was like, oh man, this is like the biggest youth group I've ever been in, because I've always been like the only student in my school, and about like maybe 2 or 3 in my school, in my class at my church. So I was like, this is big compared to normal. And so I was like, and then I got this youth pastor, and I just wanted to thank you because ever since I've started coming here, I guess you've helped me to grow. I've done a lot of things that I haven't done before. I don't know why am I doing this right now. But anyways, like he's one of those that pushes you to do things that you never thought you would do. And I went on a trip to Ecuador, and that I never thought in my wildest dreams I would ever do that. So that was interesting. It was fun, and like he just pushed me to, I guess, be confident in myself. And the fact that he trusted me, because out of all the people, he trusted me to teach all these sweet little girls, and some that aren't here. So yeah, I just want to thank you for that. So.
Yeah, Ashton, you and Andy were in school together over at CCA, and I've seen you play basketball, and you don't have any trouble with confidence. She ruled the court. All right, who else? Sabrina.
I'm going to try to get through this without crying. I mean, this was just kind of sprung on me, and so I'm not really good with change, okay? And so I just want you to know that I'm going to miss you. My children, when they were in your youth group, would say, well, Mama, Travis is really hard on me. I said, no, you're like one of his kids. He's watched you grow up, and he expects more from you, and I do too. And I just appreciate that out of you, that you love my kids, and they haven't always done the right things, but you have always, you're like a brother to me, you know? And I do, I love you, and I'm gonna miss you. I really will. So I pray good tidings for you. I pray that the places you go, they know how blessed they are to have you. And I do, I love you.
Very good. Who else? Megan?
That's what she did.
For 9 years? 9 years we worked
That's
together.
right. That's right.
Yeah, got to talk to Travis every day. So I got to take advantage of pastoral counseling with me and him and Travis. And I really appreciate, Ernie and I did the youth at our church at that time, and the boys got tired of mom and dad. And when they got tired of mom and dad, they had Travis. And we were very thankful that they had Travis. Took him to church camp. I don't know what all else he did with them, and I'm sure that, and I'll put this in the card, I'm sure that there's probably trouble that they got into, or they could have gotten into, and maybe Travis diverted that, and thank you for that ahead of time. But one special memory that I have, I can remember Garrett's senior year, and I was all in angst. My oldest son is graduating, what am I going to do? I taught him everything he needs to be taught. Travis would always stand in the doorway, and he'd kind of lean over on the door when I was sitting at my desk and he'd be talking to me. And I was sharing this with him. You know, if I taught him everything he needs to be taught, I don't know does he know how to cook? Does he know how to wash his clothes? Is he going to know how to clean? Is he going to know how to do all this kind of stuff? And Travis gave me the best advice. The best parenting advice came from a man who is not married and does not have children. And he said, so long as you teach them to love the Lord their God with all their heart, nothing else matters. And that really put my heart at ease, and thank you for that advice. And I think it shows that we did, but we didn't do it alone. We had you along with the rest of the village. So thank you, Travis.
It still helps to have clean drawers.
I don't know, let's see. One of my favorite stories about you is the first time I ever came to Grace, which I grew up coming here as a little kid, going to BBS with Ethan inviting me to come. And so that's how I kind of started going to Grace. But the first trip, I guess I went with you, you stuck me with Jaden Waters at Bo and Jenny Morgan's household in Surge. We had John Reynolds was the pastor, was our speaker that year. And I was like, why did he not stick me with the other senior boys or the other Mandy and Todd and all of them? So I was like, well, I'm stuck with Jaden Waters. That's a good thing. But it really worked out because I got to grow later on, getting to go up to Siloam and getting to work there this summer and seeing the youth grow spiritually and physically through the years. So I thank you for that.
Very good. Thank you, Jay. David?
So, yeah, Hannah told me to make it fast. Which is not possible. So, just, it's been a couple sentimental stories, so I'll just give another funny one about Travis. Because he didn't always keep us out of trouble. Now,
The truth
this is
be
definition of trouble. Definition of trouble, like it's not anything real bad, but we went to Beach Springs, not Beach, yeah, every year, and it's called winter retreat, and the rooms were so packed, and Travis, being the big-hearted guy that he is like, man, it's burning up in here, and it's too crowded. I gotta sleep outside. And me being the, genius that I am, said, me too, Travis. And I'm like a whole 80 pounds soaking wet. And we decide to sleep outside when it's 32 degrees or however cold it was. It was way too cold.
It was cold.
And we wake up the next morning and my head, body, icicles all inside the sleeping bag. And I think that Travis was cool. Like he's like, man, that's the best sleep I've ever had. And he had to beat the ice off of me.
I thought you were going to say you were snuggled up against me.
Well,
That would have been trouble. That would have
But
been
I
trouble.
got out of that point when I woke up. It's the only way I survived. But no, just it's been a long time, and a lot of good, funny times, a lot of wonderful spiritual guidance. A lot of wonderful sports guidance. Standing outside of Eternity House set up and Eternity House nights till 3 in the morning. Hannah screaming at me when I got back home, saying, "What were you doing?"
Save the souls, Hannah, save the souls.
That's right. I was like, me, Matt, and Travis, And that's that's right. But thank you, Travis, for all the guidance, and I know it's not going to stop, and for whoever you come into contact with, I know it'll be the same, right, for me. Thank you.
Good word. Somebody else?
I didn't say this, but one thing I did appreciate, and do appreciate about Travis was that, and you alluded to it this morning, is that the youth group, it was spiritually solid. There was no make-believe, but it was solid.
Real thing.
It was, yes.
Real deal. Absolutely. Good words. I'll give you a minute to see if anybody's hanging in there. King. She raises her hand and looks at her daughters. You gotta do your own work.
Well, I just wanted to say something about this past weekend, our youth retreat. It was really a blessing, and I'm glad that we just stepped out on faith and went. A lot of the kids were graduating, and so it was just a really good time. And it was just amazing to see the Lord move, and we had an amazing time of worship. And on Saturday night, I don't think there was a dry eye, in the place. And many of us, Dawson's, we don't cry in public, and so we were a little teared up. And but I had told Travis afterwards, I just felt so proud for him at a moment of going out like that with this youth group, because, and I know we've had plenty of memories, but just how neat and special it was, just to see them all. It wasn't just all about him. It was about the Lord that he led, that he showed and led them to and taught them about. And I just know that he must have just been so proud, because I was just looking out and seeing all of those teenagers and a few visitors even, and as well as the youth workers and those that were there to assist. It was just very special to see.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
I buy all that except for the Dawson not crying thing. I just saw Blake the other day in a fetal position crying in his office. She stayed at home, she didn't say anything about it work.
Tough day, Blake?
She took away his baby.
Okay, we understand that. All right, I'll give you a minute. Anybody else? Anything you want to share?
Yeah, I want to add on to what Dean said.
It's like,
When I think of Travis, I think of humility. I think it showed this morning in your, in your talk this morning when you you had the floor this morning. So I always think of that quality, because I've been in situations, been in conversations where, a lot of stuff can really go the wrong way if you're not willing to exhibit some humility. So I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that through the years, even you and I may not always agree on everything, but you and I always knew and respected where each other stood on whatever issue that was. And I've learned you and I are the same age, right? 44, right? I've learned in my 40s. Darlene said, "Oh, how old are you? You want the microphone next?" We can start running this thing in age. Yeah, it's supposed to be a little baby. But one thing I've learned is you can't always count on people to give you that same level of respect. So I appreciate that from you. I hope and pray the best for you, man. You got a lot of friends, a lot of contacts here. We'll definitely miss you, as Sabrina said. So good luck to you. Anybody else wants to talk, get this microphone out of my hand. Before I start crying on that joke.
No fetal position. Anybody else? Going once. All right, well, if you change your mind, you can let me know. Travis is happy that we made it through all that. And I didn't tell the story about him snoring anymore.
Wait, I gotta
So, see, I didn't tell the story.
You did.
Not going to tell the story. I'll just say this, that if you didn't know this, that Travis is the mockingbird of snores. No two snores are the same. He's a master. Well, I wasn't going to say anything about that, but he's an absolute master. I lay awake for hours. Amazed that every snore was different. If they come out with the same snore, you can eventually go to sleep. And Tommy, it was like two racehorses. Tommy was left way behind. Really fast. Tommy, you can't keep up with him, don't even try. All right, let's open our Bibles for a moment before we come to the table. We are in a Bible study where we're asking, where is the pre-tribulation rapture in the book of Revelation? And we're going to look at Revelation chapter 4 tonight. There's a couple of verses. Revelation chapter 4. If you want to open your New Testament, or find it on your phone, whatever you like to do. We have recently been through the book of Revelation, for those of you who are visiting with us tonight, and talked all the way through the entire book. Now we're just coming back and looking at different places where people have seen clues to when the rapture is. Remember, the rapture is a teaching in the Bible, very clearly from 1 Thessalonians and other texts, that there's coming a day when Jesus is coming back for his people. And there is this event that we call the rapture, where at some point, Jesus is going to take all of his people who are on earth to be with him in the air. The question is, when will that happen? And people have different theories about it. There's one school of thought that looks at the book of Revelation and says that sees a 7-year period right before the return of Jesus that is 3.5 years of peace and 3.5 years of great tribulation. I believe that's probably right. That fits well with what is in Daniel and in the book of Revelation. And so those of us who believe that, who adopt that interpretation, ask the question, where does the rapture fit into that? Does it fit at the beginning of that 7-year period, which would be called a pre-tribulation rapture, at the middle, which is called a pre-wrath rapture, because God's people would be taken out before he pours out all of his judgments, or post-tribulation, which says that Jesus comes for his people after they live through the tribulation, And so those are the positions. Many of you are probably already very, very familiar with these. But it's the pre-tribulation position is very, very popular in evangelical churches. And so we're looking at what the book of Revelation says about that. In Revelation 3:10, you don't have to turn to it, we looked at last week, is seen by a lot of people as sort of the definitive passage of Scripture on the timing of the revelation, of the rapture. And it happens to be in the book of Revelation. But we went through that last week, and if you're interested, you can go on YouTube and watch the teaching from last week. The others that we're going to look at, and we don't have time to look at them all tonight, are not even as clear as that one is, and may or may not even be about the rapture. You'll get the idea when we look at this first one. In Revelation chapter 4, verse 1, it says, "After these things I looked, and behold, a door stood open in heaven. And the voice which I heard speaking before, like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, 'Come up here, and I will show you the things which must happen after these things.' Immediately I was in the Spirit, and behold, a throne was there in heaven, and on the throne one sitting." Now, this is, of course, the Apostle John, and he's having a vision on the Isle of Patmos on the Lord's Day. He was in the Spirit. He was there as a prisoner because of his testimony for the gospel. And he has this vision, which we call the book of Revelation, all at one time, all 21 chapters of it. And this is him describing part of the vision where he is swept up into the presence of God himself. And if you read the rest of chapters 4 and 5, he gives an amazing description of the activities that are happening around the throne of God. Now, just prior to this, in the first chapter is an introduction, and chapters 2 and 3 are 7 letters that are written to the 7 churches in what we would call modern-day Turkey, Western Turkey. They called it Asia back then. We call it Asia Minor. And there are 7 churches that sat in a sort of circle near the coast. And he's just finished getting those 7 letters from Jesus to give to them. And then this happens. He's caught up into heaven. Now, those who see a picture here of the pre-tribulation rapture see it this way. After chapters 4 and 5, we get the breaking of the seals, the blowing of the trumpets, and the pouring out of the bowls, and particularly the pouring out of the bowls, either 7 of each, are these great judgments of God on earth. And so what some have seen here is that John is symbolic of the church. And that when John is taken up to heaven into the presence of God, that he is being removed from earth before all of this tribulation begins to happen, which is described starting in chapter 6 and through the most of the rest of the book of Revelation. And so the fact that he's caught up, he goes to heaven, and it happens before the descriptions of the judgment of the tribulation. They say, well, there you go. There is the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. Now, let me just stop and ask you, what do you think about that? Does that sound like a proper interpretation of these couple of verses? I've got one of these out there already. Paul's always ready to jump right in. What do you think, Paul?
First, it doesn't feel right. And second, we talked when we were going through this study that the church isn't mentioned again after chapter 4. And you just said that John is the representation of the church, and that's not true. John is mentioned after chapter 4.
Okay, Paul is pointing out what would be one of the next points. This is called an argument from silence. And the argument goes like this. After chapters 4 and 5, the word ecclesia which is the word for church in the New Testament, does not occur again until we get to the description of heaven in chapter 21 and 22. And so that must mean that the church is absent from the earth, since the word ecclesia is not used. So that, again, it's an argument from silence. There's no place we can go in the book of Revelation that says that the ecclesia, the church, was not on earth. It's simply not, that word is not mentioned. What do you think about that? Does that sound right? Is that a good, solid argument? Anybody? Arguments from silence tend to be kind of weak anyway. It doesn't mean they're wrong. They may be right, but they're not necessarily a good, strong argument for something. And in this particular instance, it may even be weaker than it appears at first. Because if you go back and read that part of the book of Revelation, there also is never an occurrence. In fact, there's never an occurrence of the word Antichrist in any of those chapters. And there's never an occurrence of the word Antichrist, in fact, in all of the book of Revelation. Does that mean that the Antichrist is not described in the book of Revelation? Absolutely not. He's definitely in there. What is he called? He's called the Beast. Yeah, and clearly the symbolism in the book of Revelation is that the Beast is the Antichrist. So we have to be careful about what terms are being used. In chapter 13, in fact, with this description of the beast, the Antichrist, it talks about the hagioi, the saints. The saints. Who are the saints? I'm talking football. Who are the saints?
Believers.
Okay, they are the church in all throughout the Bible. New Testament. The saints are believers. You, believers, are the saints. Now, Roman Catholicism has kind of messed us up a little bit with this terminology. Because in Roman Catholicism, to be a saint, you have to do what? Well, thank you, Ernie. You can't be a saint till you die, first of all. And not just anybody who dies is a saint.
Voted on, and there's a process.
You have to be nominated, you have to be voted on, there has to be a miracle that's associated with your life that is verifiable, and whatever other kinds of criteria that the church may put on it. And so that gives you the notion that you sort of have the garden variety believers, which is about 99+%, and you have this elite group, and they are the saints. But that is not the way that it's presented in the Bible at all. In fact, all believers are consistently addressed as the saints throughout the New Testament. And so the saints are mentioned in chapter 13 a couple of times, and the great persecution by the Antichrist, the beast, has already been unleashed in chapter 13. And so if the pre-tribulation rapture is true, then we have to do something with these saints. We can't just say, well, the word ecclesia doesn't occur in these chapters, and so it must mean that the church has been raptured away and it's absent from the world. Now, what we could do is we could say that these are people who are saved during the Great Tribulation. And it seems clear that people will be saved during that time. That even if it's true that the entire church is raptured away, every believer is gone from the face of the earth, pre-tribulation, if that's the way that it works, that still somehow people will be saved over the next 7 or 3.5 years, depending on how we look at it, in the midst of all of this craziness that's going on. Hey, we think things are crazy right now. Things will really be crazy during that 3.5-year period. And people will find Jesus during that time. We kind of talked about this a little bit last time. If all the believers were gone from the earth, how can people get saved? How do you think people would?
Last week and everybody shouted down, so
What did you say last week?
I said that last week and everybody acted like I asked a stupid question.
Well, it's not a stupid question, but I think there's a legitimate answer to it, Jack.
I remember once Billy Graham thought that 40% of the people in church on any given Sunday were unsaved. And those are the people that are there after the rapture.
Okay, Billy Graham said that 40% of the people in churches on any given Sunday, I'm assuming meant in the United States, but he went around the world, are unsaved. Now, there's actually, in the book of Revelation, there is support for that idea, not the percentage. Support for the idea that there's a significant number of people who are in churches who are unsaved. And it's in the letters, the 7 letters in chapters 2 and 3. If you read those 7 letters closely, you can see that there are rebukes by Jesus to people in those churches that sound as if they are not saved. And one of them is not very far from chapter 3, verse 10. It's chapter 3, verse 20. It says, Jesus says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." He's picturing himself as being on the outside of the church, as if he hasn't even been invited in yet. It kind of pictures an entire church that is apostate, that is unbelievers.
I got it. Benny Hinn rerun.
Benny Hinn. Now you're going to get me in trouble.
Why does anybody think that the saints have to be here for somebody to get saved?
I don't know. There will be plenty of Bibles. There will be...
There won't be any preachers.
I was going to say, I think
things will go a lot better. There, right now in the Middle East, actually this has been happening for some 20 years that I've been reading about. There are Muslims who are having visions of Jesus. And I keep hearing this from Christian missionaries from different places. These are Muslims who presumably have had no contact with a Christian missionary. I don't know the story of everyone. They're all different, I'm sure. But the point is that, yes, if Jesus were to choose to do so, that he could appear to a person just like he did to Paul on the road and convince him that he is Lord. And so the same thing can happen. But all the materials you can imagine we leave behind, not just Benny Hinn videos, but Billy Graham videos, Bibles, that 40%, if Billy Graham's right, who sat in church and heard the gospel over and over again. Jennifer?
I was going to say, there's still people here that have heard these things that are going to happen, and they're still going to be here at the rapture.
Right.
And I feel like that might flip the light switch and go, oh, there's something to that.
Yeah.
Why am I still here?
Yeah, what do I need to do next? Yeah.
Also think about with all this, all of the messages that are now available on the internet. I mean, on my Facebook feed, like I'll see this church that I can, this church that I can, this church that I can, Facebook Live, all these preachers that are on.
Almost like God's getting ready for something.
Yeah, I saw on one of our Facebook feeds, somebody from Masters that I knew get on. And I know it wasn't bad. So it's just interesting to me how.
A little cross-pollination going on. Yeah. All right. So,
I
yes,
also
ma'am.
think that the rapture itself, if it happens in the, whatever we're talking about, I mean, who are left that have heard about it, I mean, that has got to make an impact.
It's got to,
To
yeah.
say, oh my gosh, they were right, we were wrong,
Right. And you can see that sparking a revival all by itself.
Right, and see the face, because they say we're all going to see the face of God.
Yes.
So that itself, I think, would
Time to get serious.
surely.
So let's go back to chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, just real quick to wrap this up. Do you think that's a valid way to look at this particular text? Is John representative of the church, and is this the pre-tribulation rapture of the church?
I don't think so.
No.
That's too subtle. God is not typically that subtle. And that's been developed. I mean, where else can we go find support for that? In even the book of Revelation?
Well, in the book of Revelation, if you think 3:10 is support for it, then that's where we would go. And for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, you can go back and watch last Sunday night where we talked about chapter 3, verse 10. This is a little overly subtle. That John would be the representative of the entire church. Because in just a couple of verses, the 24 elders are seen as being the representative of the church. And secondly, we start to see the church all over the place, and that's what we're going to see as we look at a few more texts in the next week when we get together. So even those who are strong believers in the pre-tribulation rapture don't really think that this is good support. That's probably not what's being taught here. That to take this literally really should mean that John is being taken up to heaven into the presence of God. Isn't that the literal way to understand this text? That the Apostle John is being swept away and he is brought into the presence of God and he sees these wonderful things that happen in chapters 4 and 5. But in chapter 4, next time we'll look at the 24 elders, because that's the next place people go in looking for the rapture in the book of Revelation. They think that the 24 elders may be representative of the church, and there they are in heaven before all of this